Okay, we will call this special council meeting to order for April the 19th at 3 p.m. and I will ask Councillor Gap Bates to please read the land acknowledgement.
The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nations of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit, who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. And just before we get started today, I just want to acknowledge Pat Newman. Of course, people are aware that Pat passed away last week, and she was the first female councillor in 1980 and became Innisfail's first woman mayor in 1987. Fantastic community builder, of course, business owner with her partner Bob at Newman Ford since 1966, I believe they came to town, and we just want to acknowledge her. We know she spent many years in council chambers and was just a fantastic citizen and volunteer in this community. So we send our deepest condolences to her family. And I'd just like to welcome everyone in the gallery today, just to give notice of how meetings should run in our council chambers. We do have a conduct for the public in our council chambers, and members of the public during the meeting will maintain order and quiet, and not interrupt a speech or action of council or another person addressing the members. And B, the chair may order a member of the public who creates a disturbance or acts improperly at a meeting to be expelled for the remainder of the meeting. So we just want to make sure that people are aware that we do have a bylaw to address conduct in these chambers. So without further ado, I will call on CEO, or I guess adoption of the agenda, sorry, 2.1. Could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda?
Barclay, I would make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, and I will next call on CEO Todd Becker, please, to introduce our delegation today.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. As part of the transition of the local victim services program to a regional program, I'd like to introduce Chair Pat Bourne as well as CEO Michelle Moraz come before council as a delegation to highlight with you the new program of victim services.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Michelle and Pat. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us. Mayor Barclay, Councillor, guests, I believe I bring really good news to you today. As the organization of Central Alberta Regional Victim Serving Society, we have been able to reestablish victim services here in Innisfail after an absence of about 5 months. Ian Imey, who is present today, has been instrumental in supporting us as a new organization in reestablishing services, and I'll speak to both the services at a local level as well as what the regional model will look like going forward. So the mandate of victim services has not changed. It will always be that the victim is at the center of all that we do, and as much as possible, be able to support services in surrounding them with the resources as well as the services they need in support of the Canadian Victim Bill of Rights, which is where we achieve our direction from. So as the agenda is up on the board, I'll give you a little bit of background to the model as well as show you the map of our region, because it is quite large, and it actually does reflect and is identical to the Central Administrative District of the RCMP. I should introduce you to some of the stakeholders and some of the partnerships we have, as well as to highlight some of those new models. And of course, provide you with the contact information if you have any questions going forward. Thanks, Marina. So I feel like I need to say Pat Bourne, who needs no introduction in this in this council, but truly, Pat is with us today, who I know you all know very well, and she is the board chair of the new board for the Central Alberta Regional Victim Serving Society, and I'll refer to that as CARVS in the next few minutes so that it's a little easier for folks. And my name, as mentioned, is Michelle Messaros, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the new organization. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to ensure that Pat was here is we do have a new board, and we are very much committed at the board level to representation of the areas that we serve. Pat being from Innisfail, we have members now from St. Albert, Morinville, Rocky, Leduc, Parkland. So one of the things we are committed to is ensuring that we are getting board members from a variety of areas that we represent. And because in any type of sort of regionalization approach, same thing happens in healthcare, is often what people think is that they're losing their local autonomy or local decision making. And again, this is why we are absolutely committed in CARVS to having a board that consists of members as much as possible of the regions that we serve. So we recently did our strategic planning, and again, I won't go through all of this, but you know, as I mentioned earlier, our absolute highest priority is serving the victims that need our services, right? And when we speak about what situations those might be, is we speak to the victims of crime and tragic circumstances. Under their rights, again, identified by the Victims Services, Victim Bill of Rights in Canada, which is where we receive our direction. And truly, if we look broader to a vision, a broader vision, we hope that across Alberta, we'll be able to achieve a service where every victim of either crime or tragic circumstances is empowered to move forward with their lives. And when I speak about the province, part of this regional model actually has been creating 4 distinct regions, and those regions do align directly with the RCMP regions. So as a result, in the Central Administrative District, headquarters is in Leduc, and as a result, our headquarters are also going to be in Leduc. And I will show you a map of the region shortly. Our values, as you can see, absolute integrity. We want to make a difference in the lives of the folks that we serve. Empathy, of course, is crucial to these very sensitive situations, and being very accountable for both the victims that we serve, the information that we are provided as a result of the service, and as well to members of the public like yourselves to ensure that there is as much accountability as possible and transparency of communication. I think you missed one there. Did you? Did you miss one? Oh, no, good. All right, here's our region. So again, as I mentioned, exactly the same as the Central Administrative District of the RCMP. You can see it's quite large, all the way from Fort Saskatchewan in the north to, of course, here we are in Innisfail, which is our most southern point. You can also see that there are a couple of spots, it might not be really clear, that there are actually gaps in the sort of purple color, such as Camaros and Red Deer. And these are areas where they actually have their own city police. So this is to illustrate that when we're talking about the regional victim services, it is all those areas where there's RCMP service. When there is a city police service, they will actually have their own victim services. So this is just to clarify that these are all the areas that we will be serving, and where there is city police, there is a separate victim services. So the stakeholders that we have, our funders are the Government of Alberta. They have been very active in guiding the work, initially identifying the need for this work in a MLA review about 4 years ago. and then the process started about 2 years ago. They are our link to the Crown because, of course, the court and court support is so crucial to the pieces that we provide. We need that connection into the Crown, especially in the way of process and procedure. K Division, which is the RCMP administrative division that lives in Edmonton, they have also been one of our stakeholders because, of course, we may not necessarily be able to engage in those initial processes with all RCMP detachments. They have been the representative, again, mostly around process and policy. One of the first things that I did coming into this role is coming out to Innisfail and all those other regions, because I think the personal engagement, the knowledge of the local situation is really critical. And as a result, actually, we've been able to attract over 80% of existing staff members from the previous victim service units to the new organization. So we're very proud of that, and we feel very committed that that was because of the engagement we did on a variety of levels. So CARVS is the operational structure that will be providing the victim services going forward. And again, we have both our Director of Regional Operations, our Assistant Director of Operations over at the RCMP, as well as your new victim service navigator named Jolene, and I'm sure she would be more than happy to be greeted if you're over in that direction. She comes to us actually with experience from Didsbury. This is closer to her home, so we're very happy to have her. The local detachment area, of course, is we are still co-located. We're located in the exact same area that the previous units have been located. And again, we have a memorandum of understanding with the RCMP, so that though it's that relationship that is where we will get our referrals and exchange of information and things like that. Community partners, again, as you can imagine, between shelters and different social supports, family and social services, there are a variety of partnerships that we have, and we will re-engage those folks who have those partnerships already. So the mandate hasn't changed for what victim services is. And what you will find in Innisfail, I think more often than not, you won't notice much of a difference because, well, I guess one, you didn't have services for a while, but truly, the mandate is the same. It is the same type of service. And where the regional model comes in, a couple of things. That this is just our central support team, but one of the ways that we're going to actually create more capacity at the local level for providing victim services is to be able to take off the plates of those frontline workers some of that administrative burden. So we're talking about reporting or building a budget or finance or HR. So one of the advantages to that regional model truly is having the person who's in the detachment completely being dedicated to victim services. And so as a result, we have a central support team who will live mostly in Leduc, but especially from an assistant director of operations, Brittany Sandy, who comes to us from Ponoka, and the Ponoka service, victim service unit, you will see her more often than anyone else because she will be here supporting Jolene on a regular basis. So a couple things around the regional model itself. Mandate, as I say, hasn't changed. You have a full-time person now in the detachment here in Innisfail. One of the things that we needed to be guaranteed is regular service, regular hours that are posted in the detachment. And again, you have a full-time person, which is equal to, if not slightly more than what you had previously, right? A variety of central support. But one of the things that allows for is the folks in Innisfail are no longer unto themselves. They have support from both a central support team, they have support from an assistant director of operations who will be here on a regular basis. And especially in an area like Innisfail, which is slightly rural, I think this is where you're going to see some of that support. if Jolene decides that she needs to go on holidays or, perhaps has fallen ill, there is going to be support. You will not have a gap like you've had currently of 5 months. We have folks in Ponoka, we have folks in other areas that are close, that because we have centralized the intake, we can support Innisfail, even if there wasn't someone directly present. And I think the other thing is the people who are in the units then also don't feel like they're all out there by themselves. They have somebody that they can approach, that can advocate for them, that they will see on a regular basis, that they will see the support that they need. So, as I mentioned, central intake. So the intakes do go directly to a central intake, which is centralized, again, and it is virtual, of course, but what that allows for, again, is the division of labor, and if somebody is not present, we can go from there. Across the region, there's actually about 35 navigators that will have been hired, and most rural areas will see an increase in service. The other thing about funding is that there will no longer be a need to fundraise. Unfortunately, with fundraising, what happened, as I always sort of refer to it, as the have and the have not. Some of the larger units that had a variety of members would end up doing a whole bunch of fundraising, and they were able to provide services over and above what the mandate was. And while that sounds really good, what happens then is people get used to those level of services, and then they might experience another region, and they'll say, why is this so different? So one of the aspects of the regional model is a more consistent level of service across the region. And, especially in the areas that are more rural and remote, that will definitely be an increase to what is available to those regions. And the consistency is also really important from the victim perspective. So whether you live in Leduc or Innisfail or Rocky Mountain House, now that level of service and what you will be offered will be far more standardized. And this was actually part of what drew the attention in the first place, is the lack of standardization of services. So those are the highlights. One of the things, especially from a service perspective, I think folks also identify with victim services with crisis callouts. Now, one of the things that we really need to reestablish here in Innisfail is an advocate group. Because of the absence of a unit for some time, the advocates, who are those volunteers that are really committed to this service and helping out those victims, especially in a crisis situation. Until we have those in place, it's going to be very difficult for Jolene to be full-time staff and support crisis callouts. So if you know anybody either who was a previous advocate or might have the capacity to volunteer with victim services, we would really appreciate those names coming forward. You can send them forward to Pat or myself, because we'd like to be able to reestablish that for Innisfail. So are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions for Michelle? I have a question, I guess.
Please.
Curious about, not sure what the right term is, but I guess non-chargeable files, shall we say? Because when there was first talk of changing this model, at that time, I think we're going back 2 or 3 years now, but that they were going to take things out of victim services, such as something where charges wouldn't be laid. So suicide, for example, or maybe a domestic incident where maybe charges aren't being laid. And maybe I have this wrong, but my understanding is that Innisfail Victim Services used to fundraise to provide that kind of service. So I'm wondering where that is at.
Sure. Hopefully you heard earlier that I very much use the terms trauma, victims of tragic circumstances, because there is that opportunity to serve those victims. We acknowledge that there's always going to be those situations. There might even be some, like you're saying about, well, maybe the charges aren't known yet. So there's always going to be a little bit of gray. What we often like to refer to is basically always either, whether you want to say no closed doors or always an open door, is if we're not able to provide the service necessarily directly from victim services, is the resource and the connection, is that warm handoff. But yes, victims of tragic circumstances are also currently included, and I'm well aware that this is what the communication was earlier, and it is something that has been acknowledged. As you said, the fundraising often then was able to provide things even beyond that. And while again, a wonderful opportunity for Innisfail, it did create some disparity between some of the units that didn't have that opportunity. So again, it may feel slightly different, but the mandate has not changed. And the only thing right now, again, because we don't have our advocates in place, is that there will feel like a slightly decrease in service because of those crisis callouts.
No, thank you, Michelle, for that answer. Any questions? Councillor Heistek?
No, no real questions. I think we're fortunate to have Pat in the role itself. We're lucky as a community to have the previous victim services being very steady and having great advocates. I think that we're fortunate that way, and it's a reboot. And I'll be upfront. I was very skeptical with things, so having you come today is a good reboot and a start to moving forward. So I hope that you know, we can move forward and build something new with our, you know, our council, the new advocates, as well as our chair and our K division, as well as our CMP and our local protective services. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure, Jason. And I will echo the fact that I also feel very fortunate to have Pat as part of our board. Her knowledge, as you know, is extensive, and I get to learn a lot as well. So thanks.
Thank you for that. And Victim Services is beginning today in Innisfail?
Yes,
Correct?
and this is part of the reason why we really wanted
Yes.
to come today,
Yeah,
is
that's
because
fantastic.
literally, as we speak, Jolene and our Lauren, our Director of Regional Operations, and Brittany, who is our Assistant Director of Operations, are inputting the files that we received today into our new case management system, which is cloud-based, and is going to be very accessible for folks. It's quite intuitive and a little easier to use than the previous system.
And do I understand that we're the first? The first?
You are the
We're
first.
We're number one.
You are the first. And truly,
Yeah.
Ian has been instrumental in this. We were excited and we wanted to come even earlier, but I mean, we do have to follow, you know, process and have everything in place. So we've been really excited about being able to come back. So.
And it's fantastic, and thanks for being here, and thank you to Staff Sergeant Imey for all his advocacy and work in getting this up and going maybe earlier than was anticipated. So that's great. So thank you again for coming, and we look forward to a great relationship moving forward, and I know everything's in good hands.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you very much, Mayor Barclay. And again, my information is there. You can contact Pat, and we'd be happy to provide an update at any point. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, we will move on to 4.1 with Director Jenkins. And Director Jenkins, I will let you introduce your team.
Turn it over to Gordon and Pallavi to provide an overview for the Napoleon Lake South development concept.
And good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So you have before you a report that highlights what administration has been doing with respect to the Napoleon Lake South land development. I can speak directly to the report, but we'll have Pallavi go through the presentation that is included with the report, and then perhaps we can take questions afterwards, because that will help to frame out the discussion. Okay.
We can start with the slides. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and everybody present here. Today we're continuing the discussion of the planning concepts of Napoleon Lake South Development Planning Area. There's a correction with the naming of the development here. So we're revisiting this with, again, with the vision, objectives of the development, principles applied, planning concept, and housing typologies fitting for the development. For the members in the gallery, the town has been working on creating a planning concept for land development on the green field site south of the Napoleon Lake area. Next slide, please. The town's vision for this site is to create a successful, vibrant neighborhood center with the development of a mixed-use commercial center and a walkable residential area that prioritizes pedestrian activity and movement, encourages community gathering and socialization between neighbors. We had the opportunity to conduct public consultation regarding the site last year, as well as various housing assessment studies for the community. Responding to the recent context of housing in the Innisfail, as well as taking people's feedback into account, we have three major objectives in planning of this area, which is number one, increase housing supply; two, maintain neighborhood character; number three, create a vibrant and thriving neighborhood. The objectives align with town's vision, as well as a majority of community feedback as shown in the slide there. We are trying to achieve those objectives through 6 principles, each of which respond to one or more objectives as outlined in the slide. We'll look into the application of the principles in the concepts in the upcoming slides. So number one is housing diversity. We offered this with provision of a range in housing types from detached and attached dwellings to apartment units and mixed-use buildings. Number two, preservation of community character. We're attempting to do this by setting a hierarchy in size and density of dwellings from low to high as we move down south towards the commercial area in the site. Doing this, we're providing housing of similar character and size near the existing neighborhood. Number three, we have maximize potential of local neighborhood center. We recognize this area as close to established recreational natural facilities like Field and Forge, Town Arena, Napoleon Lake, etc. Hence, we attempt to take advantage of its location and its potential to become a neighborhood center, potentially like a smaller version of the main street, and directing some density and vibrant commercial usages towards the area. This area is also established as a neighborhood center in the 30-year development planning of Innisfail, which the town is also undertaking at present with the name Imagine Innisfail. Number four, accessibility and walkability. Our design will have connections to natural trails, encouragement towards active transportation like walking and biking, and traffic safety to achieve this principle. Number five, provision of green space and recreational areas. This is achieved by providing pedestrian-friendly streets and programmable green areas to increase opportunity for recreation and play. Number six, cultural and social inclusion. To encourage this, we are, again, focusing on making spaces accessible to all ages and abilities, which encourages social interactions and opportunity for integration of people in different stages of life and background. From our previous and camera discussions with the councils, we collectively moved forward with a planning concept which fulfills the planning objectives and reflects with creating a more vibrant and thriving neighborhood. Next slide, please. The residential development is planned to support the area as a neighborhood center, like mentioned, with mixed-use commercial on the south and residential development over as shown. Next slide, please. This concept introduces a shared street approach in the north-south residential strip above, with traffic calming measures that limits through traffic from the busier commercial stretch on the south. Our intention here is to create a vibrant and walkable neighborhood street next to the vibrant commercial street in the south. And it is also It may also absorb some commercial usages from the south, making space for potentially live-work units or home-based businesses in the neighborhood. The housing adjacent to existing 44th Street Crescent is planned to remain R&B land use zone for detached homes. Going south, we introduce R2, R3 for medium density residential of detached, semi-detached, and townhomes, and direct control district for mixed-use neighborhood center. Next slide, please. Did we miss a slide? Okay. So this option has 59 homes, and additional possibility of 13 laneway suites are also shown in this concept facing west towards the trail. Now zooming in here, the street is proposed to have colored paving as seen in the right over there to demarcate the pedestrian priority nature of the street. Chicanes pointed over there, which are curved laneways at the end of the streets, are used on both entries, are also used to slow down traffic going to into the street. On-street parking is provided and is demarcated with difference in paving, and planters is also provided to additionally define street parking. Now we'll see more of each of the concepts. So chicanes are these curved roadways created by adding curb bulbs altering on each side of the street. These create a meandering path for vehicles and reduce vehicle speed by forcing them to maneuver carefully one at a time. Next slide, please. And these are some examples for shared streets where people will be able to use the streets as additional public spaces where children can play, people can ride their bikes, and enjoy their walk and meet their friends. Next slide. Some more examples with parking spaces, trees, and planters, kids playing, people moving without worrying of speeding vehicles. So as we make space for people to interact and play, we make the community more vibrant and attractive. Next slide. So these are the examples of laneway suites, as we're revisiting again. Some of these are built alongside or over garages. And this is how it functions with the main residence and the secondary suite facing the laneway. Now we look into the housing typologies offered through this concept, how they can look like, and how they may sit on the properties. We have 4 kinds of lots, single detached with larger lots on the north, and moving south, we have another single detached with smaller lots alternating with duplex dwellings, and then townhouses on the smaller end. We'll be walking through different types of detached duplex and row houses in the next slides. These are dwellings on the north end, adjacent the existing houses, and have similar lot sizes and housing types with front garages. Next slide. These detached homes are in the center stretch, alternating with duplexes homes, and we can see them in single-story or 2-story options. Both have vehicle access through the laneways. Next slide. And here are the duplex options on the same stretch, and these can also be single or 2-story options, and which also have similar character to the single detached dwellings. These lots of the stretch on the west may be longer in depth and may have potentially laneway suites as required. These are some examples of garage suites built on 2-car garages. They can be 1-bed, 1-bath suites to 2-bed, 1-bath units. They're designed properly to fit the character of the dwellings on the lots and face the trails. Finally, towards south are our townhouses. We have the options with front or attached garages and those with parking access from laneways. Townhouses adjacent to existing housing can be 2-story or one matching the height of the existing detached and duplex dwellings that are currently present. Some more examples of townhouse designs. And finally, this is the concept of the mixed-use commercial area. A neighborhood center area here with residential development as well. This is the direct control district, and the concept here is from ongoing discussion with an interested developer of the site. We anticipate this site to develop as neighborhood street center, as we are talking about, and have a local main street feel with pedestrian-friendly north-south street, and then heading up to the residential area. This development has a 4-story apartment building on the east side of the street, which will house 32 unit or homes. On the west side, close to the north south street, we have 4-story mixed-use building with residential of 24 homes and the commercial on ground floor and another commercial retail unit building in the corner. And on the other corner towards Highway 54, we have a drive-through and a convenience store with a gas station. This concludes the presentation for the concept of Napoleon Lake South Development.
Okay, thank you very much. And Manager Shaw?
So Mayor and Council, you have a motion in this report, but basically just to highlight and summarize what Pallavi was speaking of. So we're anticipating that there would be a creation of 2 new commercial, 1 apartment, 22 townhouses, 16 duplexes, as well as 21 detached dwelling parcels. If Council gives administration the approval to move ahead with this, then we would be looking at having mail out to area residents with project information as well as webpage and open house. So later on in the month, the RFP for the detailed engineering design will close. So the project webpage will be going live very quickly here, depending upon your decision. So we plan to have an open house on September 10th during registration night, public information open house. And then September 23rd is when we have projected the first reading of bylaws for rezoning this particular parcel, but also for the commercial parcel too. And then in late October, having the public hearing for the rezoning bylaws. And so, Mayor and Council, we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have once you've made the motion.
All right, thank you, Manager Shaw. Does anybody have questions for Manager Shaw? I have a question about the August 20th, the RFP for detailed engineering design. Can you tell me what that entails, please?
So, Mayor and Council, part of this process is to be able to contract with a third party to get the detailed engineering prepared for this development. So we have already sent out an RFP, or operations has sent out a request for proposal via the Alberta Purchasing Connection website to identify that the town of Innisfail has this need for this type of service. And so in looking at the website earlier, there does appear to be a very high degree of interest in this service. And so I think it's August 27th is when it closes. And then the administration will have to determine then which is the preferred engineering company to select.
CEO Becker.
Yeah, just to supplement Mayor Barclay on your question, it's also to give, really the idea is to get more detailed costing of what that would look like. We don't want to get ahead of council. We have not stated that this is a go-ahead, this is a concept, but administration through my guidance is to issue the RFP, to get budgetary numbers for your consideration, and we'll go from there.
That's perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of wondering. Okay, any more questions? Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and through to Manager Shaw. I'm just thinking about the public information open house. That'll be at the arena, and that's the registration night. Kind of the same scenario that, was it 2 years ago we first kind of started talking about? Yeah. So it's fine. I have no concerns about that. I just have a request, I think, and that is in some of the material that we provide, and you've done this presentation was really well done. You've certainly incorporated a lot of the things that we've talked about in the past, but some of the examples or some of the drawings that are shown reflect streets that have commercial buildings or they have high-rise buildings, and so it would be helpful, I think, to not pose that kind of a scenario for the public here. Like, let's just keep it to scenarios that show single family or maybe a 2-story or a 4-story apartment, but let's try and make it as authentic to Innisfail. I appreciate that this is still very much sort of imaginary at this point in time, but I think people get misled or they misunderstand. So if we can be clear about what it might look like, that would be better from my perspective.
And so, Mayor and Council, we are working on the presentation boards that will be presented at the open house. And so that is a focus that we have taken into consideration to show in general, these are the ideas that we're trying to accomplish with this proposal, but the concept itself will take center stage.
I'm also curious, Manager Shaw, if, and maybe it's not even possible, but we spoke about, framing some of this around economic development as well, or I should say economic loss. So for every person that lives outside of this town that works in town, their pay is being automatically deposited into their account, but they're spending it likely in the community in which they live. So we're losing out on that, or our business community is certainly losing out on that. And we're also losing out on maybe that 55 plus or 65 plus that now have no place to go when they need to change from the home that they currently live in, and we're losing them to Red Deer. So there's a lot of loss, I feel, that is taking place in the community, or not enough gain because we don't have the housing here, and kind of framing some of that discussion around that, because like I said, I don't know if it's possible for us to measure it. It's probably certainly be an estimate, but I think it's really important to realize just how much we are losing because we don't have the housing here for people on all sides of the housing spectrum. Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I just want to say thank you so much. I'm watching the evolution of this over the last several months and what it's become and how granular you've got down into it. I think that when the public does see this, I think that, or my hope is that people will see how beneficial this is going to be to our community. And I just want to say what a good job that the entire administration and your team has done. It's been wonderful to watch it evolve. And I personally feel many of the things that I have observed on my travels and about these communities, that this is going to fulfill that, the commercial space, the style of the road, and I think it's going to do our community really well if it ends up coming to fruition, so thank you.
Okay, Councillor Heistan?
I was going to make the motion, if
Okay,
that
I was just going
works.
to ask somebody to make a motion.
All right. That council approves the proposed project and public consultation process for the development of Napoleon Lake South area.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Bates.
Yeah, I just have one through to admin. Do we have any other projected active development that we don't already see in town for residential? Because I'm not aware of any other projected residential development by current developers. Just asking if we have one.
Mayor Barclay, I'll lead in, perhaps to other staff. Obviously, when you ask that question, Councillor Bates, you think of Bella Vista. Obviously, we have constant conversation with them about how they're advancing their phases, and we're not seeing large movement in that area. Across the pond, we have not heard a lot of detail recently of the, again, help me, Evertrust development. Yeah, and maybe perhaps Megan, Director Jenkins or Manager Shaw could add in, but that's loosely, we're not getting a lot of feedback that in our hands right now. We're moving towards development. There is still anticipation of other areas of the community that there is some interest in some developments, but nothing active and
Nothing
moving
active.
projects.
That's my question, because, I mean, I see the lots being used up, and I'm not, and I would add one then to your Hazelwood. There's no other streets that are eminently.
Mayor and council, there's no other subdivision that has come forward with respect to like the Hazelwood subdivision, because I've noted that every week it seems to change, that there's another house that's going up, and the number of vacant subdivided service lots seems to be decreasing. There was a company that came in last week that was looking at the southwest area, the 33-acre parcel off of Woodland Road. They were proposing multi-unit type development in that general area. But at this point, they've just come forward to say, hey, this is an idea that we have, and we'll have to go back and do further research on it. But they
thank you.
appear to be interested in that parcel. With this development, we are targeting different types of residential typologies, as Pallavi had indicated, certainly trying to fill different gaps in our housing continuum. And so that's why you see the types of designs that you have now, so that hopefully it could accommodate a wide range from your entry-level type of family up to those seniors who are interested in having a smaller size property compared to what they have now.
Yep, thank you, and I do appreciate the diversity of what's being presented here. Thank you.
And Manager Shaw, how many lots do we have in Napoleon Meadows left? Is it 2? Is that what?
In
Napoleon Meadows?
I can speak to that. So
Okay, sorry.
currently, all of the town-owned vacant lots are pending sale or are conditionally sold. We do still have the one True Line home that has not sold yet.
Okay,
So essentially, there's currently no vacant lots listed.
okay. Thank you, Director Jenkins. Okay, so we have a motion. All in favor of the motion? All right, carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, we will move into 5.1, correspondence and information. So we have some funding that came through in the Canada Community Building Fund, thinking. Yes, Canada Community Building Fund from the feds, so that's good to see. Just go down a little bit further.
I can speak to this, Mayor Barclay.
Yes, please.
So just, I know it originally came through to Mayor Barclay, but on to administration from Karen Scarlett, asking council for a letter of support for an application to the Alberta Foundation of the Arts for a public art project. project correspondence or the information would tell you that for 3 large murals in the community-driven fiber art installation, there's a deadline for application September 1st. Ms. Scarlett is asking for a letter of support to go along with her application.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering, would we be able to have Karen come like as a delegation? Like next week or something, and explain the project to us, or this application to us further?
That's what council wishes.
Not a problem, just-
Certainly could ask Ms. Scarlett to come before council, if that's really up to you,
Yeah,
Ms. Council.
for sure. Councillor Hystad?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think it was Karen supposed to come and present last meeting?
No.
No? Okay. Because I think just on the, when I read through everything, to me, it makes sense as to the process as to, if council wishes, is to give a letter of support. I don't, for myself, necessarily need a presentation, but that's up to the body here and how we're looking at it. So I'm looking at the streamlining piece. So that's my opinion, but I'll check in with you, Mayor
Yes,
Barclay.
Well, I was asking for delegation because we do have a public art policy. I'm not sure where that is, Director Jenkins, or if you're still there, can you tell us where that process
Yeah,
is?
so we've received a draft back from the art consultant just late last week. So we'll be working to review that administratively. Hopefully be able to get back the latter half of September with a draft for council. Yeah, in terms of Ms. Scarlett coming in as a delegation, she did provide or offer that up. Whether council wishes to support provide the letter and then allow scheduling for that update in the next couple of weeks, or want to wait for that delegation to happen first.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Wing?
Yeah, Mayor Barclay, thank you. I actually would just endorse providing the letter of support now. The 3 murals are on privately owned property in town. I think that it would be great to have a delegation and talk a little bit more about what this all looks like, but I just think in the essence of time, if we'd had this conversation a week ago, given that the deadline is September the 1st, I personally don't have a problem, and if you need a motion for that, I'm prepared to make the motion at this time.
Okay, can you just scroll down a little bit, Juanita, please? Okay. Okay, yeah, my only question was how it all fits in with our public art policy, that's all, but that sounds like it's a little ways away, so. So, Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I did have a look at the draft public art policy today, and I also have a question, I guess, relating to how this kind of merges with some of the pieces that we've got outlined in there, which, like you've said, I don't think we will have an opportunity to make those pieces meet. I guess I do have a couple of questions, though, and that is, one of them is, does providing a letter of support, is that then just equivalent to council approving the project? That's one question, that's for us. And then the second question is this letter of support required by the project proposal?
I can speak to that. So the letter of support does not commit council in any way in terms of financial support to the project. It's simply providing support to the grant application in terms of general municipal support to this type of work. And currently within the town's regulatory structure, we don't regulate mural installation on private property.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Councillor, or CO Becker?
Then the other part to the question, Councillor Messaros, is yes, typically a grant application of such requires municipal resolution, council resolution.
Yeah, we actually asked Karen to come today with this because you are looking for a letter of support, and I was wondering if I could do it by myself, but no, can't. No, not today, sorry. We're good. We're good. We'll have does somebody would like to make a motion for letter of support?
I'll make that
Councillor
motion, Mayor Barclay. Gotcha.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, all in favor? All right, carried, thanks. Okay, and we'll just scroll down a little bit further, Juanita. Oh, yeah, I just want to, can you just stop there? I just want to address this. I don't know how many people are aware that there was a employee in Rocky View County that was shot. He was out working early one morning and came across a vehicle or something and was shot. And there was a Fortis employee with him or in the area that was also shot but survived. So very, very sad that Rocky View County lost an employee, a young dad with a family. And so certainly send our condolences off to Rocky View County in this horrible tragedy. And I think Mavericks are already gone to down east. Yeah, they're already gone, yeah. And, okay, and I think we've addressed that with invite out. So, and then there's also a Varma presentation or an invitation to Carbon Capture Canada Conference this year. They're going to have a Varma night, so if anybody would like to go, I'm going to go up to it for the evening and hang out for a little bit. So if anybody would like to go, please, you can have Juanita register you. And, okay, so we'll just have a motion to please accept the correspondence and information. Councillor Messaros?
I'd like to make that motion, please, Mayor
Okay,
Barclay.
thank you. All in favor? Thanks. And then we will have a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barclay, I'd like to make that motion.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.